When five leather-clad bikers rolled into Riverside County Farmers Market looking for trouble, they picked the wrong target. The 280-pound farmer arranging vegetables seemed like an easy mark. Slow, soft, harmless. But Marcus Webb wasn't what he appeared to be. Beneath those dirt-stained overalls was a man who'd spent 12 years leading the most dangerous operations in Delta Force history. What happened next would teach these bikers the hardest lesson of their lives. Never judge a warrior by his waistline. Before we dive in, let us know where you're watching from, and make sure to subscribe. Tomorrow's story is one you won't want to miss. This is Riverside, California, a quiet agricultural community where everyone knows everyone, where the farmers market has run every Saturday for 40 years, and where respect has always been the currency of daily life. Marcus Webb had been back for 3 years, running his late father's farm after retiring from a military career he never talked about. To his neighbors, he was just a friendly veteran who grew the best tomatoes in the county and always had time for a conversation. But when the Iron Wolves Motorcycle Club decided to make Riverside their new territory, they had no idea they were about to collide with a man whose skills hadn't dulled with age. They'd simply been waiting for the right moment to resurface. Today, that moment arrived, and these bikers were about to learn that some men don't need to look dangerous to be lethal. The California sun had barely cleared the San Bernardino Mountains when Marcus Webb's weathered Ford pickup rolled into Riverside County Farmers Market. 4:47 a.m., same time as every Saturday for the past 3 years. Routine was comforting. Routine was normal. Routine didn't remind him of classified operations or midnight raids or the weight of decisions that cost lives. At 52, Marcus carried 280 pounds on his 6-foot frame. Most of it settled around his middle in the way that happens when a man trades battlefield rations for home-cooked meals and replaces combat training with farm work. His movements were unhurried as he unloaded crates of heirloom tomatoes, organic lettuce, and the butternut squash that had become his signature crop. To anyone watching, he was just another farmer, soft around the edges, friendly, unremarkable. No one watching would have guessed that those thick fingers arranging produce with surprising delicacy had once assembled sniper rifles in complete darkness. Or that the mild-mannered man humming along to classic rock on his truck radio had led some of the most dangerous operations in modern military history. That was exactly how Marcus preferred it. "Good morning, Mr. Webb." Mrs. Chen's voice carried across the market pavilion, bright and cheerful despite her 73 years. She shuffled toward his stall with her rolling cart, the same floral pattern she'd used for a decade. "Your tomatoes look especially beautiful today." Marcus smiled, the expression genuine and warm. "Morning, Mrs. Chen. Got some of those Cherokee purples you like. Been saving the best ones for you." He selected 3 perfect specimens, their deep purple-red skin catching the morning light. His hands were gentle despite their size, treating each tomato like it mattered, because to Mrs. Chen it did. Small kindnesses. Simple transactions. This was the life he'd chosen, the peace he'd earned after 12 years of choosing between bad options and worse ones. "You spoil me," Mrs. Chen tisked, but her eyes crinkled with pleasure as she accepted the tomatoes. "Your father would be proud, you know, taking such good care of his land." "Trying my best, ma'am." Marcus's voice carried the soft roughness of someone who'd once barked orders in the Hindu Kush, but now saved his words for vegetable advice and weather observations. The market filled gradually as morning deepened. Sarah Rodriguez arrived with her 4-year-old daughter Emma, who immediately ran to Marcus's stall with the fearlessness of children who've never learned that some people might be dangerous. "Mr. Marcus! Mr. Marcus! Mama says we can get strawberries today." Marcus crouched down, the movement surprisingly fluid for a man his size, bringing himself to Emma's eye level. "Well, that's some good news. You know what? I found the biggest, reddest strawberry this morning, and I've been saving it just for you." He produced the berry from a special container, presenting it like a treasure. Emma's eyes went wide with wonder, and Sarah mouthed a silent "thank you" over her daughter's head. These moments, this connection, this normalcy, this was what Marcus had come home for. By 8:30, the market hummed with life. Farmers arranged displays, customers browsed with reusable bags, and the smell of fresh coffee from the corner stand mixed with the earthy scent of produce. Riverside's farmers' market had operated in this same location for 40 years, a weekly ritual of community and commerce. Then the rumble started. Marcus heard them before he saw them. 5 motorcycles, their engines deliberately loud, modified exhausts announcing their presence like a warning. His body responded before his conscious mind caught up. Threat assessment protocols activated automatically, decades of training impossible to silence completely. 5 riders, Harley-Davidsons, expensive models, formation suggesting hierarchy, leader in front, enforcers flanking, weapons unknown but probable, civilians present, 23 visible, likely more. Exits, 3 primary, 2 secondary. Distance to nearest cover, 12 feet. All of this processed in the 2 seconds it took for the Iron Wolves to park their bikes in front of the market entrance, blocking the main access point. The leader dismounted first. Vic Viper. Santoro was 38 and built like he spent more time in the gym than on a bike. His leather vest bore the Iron Wolves patch, a snarling wolf's head over crossed bones, and his arms displayed a canvas of ink, snakes, skulls, dates that probably marked violence he was proud of. His face carried the particular arrogance of a man used to intimidating people, used to getting his way through threat and swagger. "Well, well," Viper's voice cut through the morning peace like broken glass. "Look at this cute little farmer's market. Real nice setup you got here." The market went quiet. Conversations died mid-sentence. Mrs. Chen's hand tightened on her cart handle. Behind Viper, his crew fanned out with practiced intimidation. Tank, 6'4" of muscle and meanness. Snake, wiry and aggressive, tattoos crawling up his neck. Razor, nervous energy and cold eyes. Bull, following the leader's cues like a dog waiting for commands. Marcus continued arranging his butternut squash, his movements unchanged, but his peripheral vision tracked every member of the group. Tank, favoring left leg, old injury. Snake, right hand dominant, probably carrying. Razor, twitchy, unpredictable. Bull, follower will hesitate before acting. "Excuse me?" Viper stopped at the first stall. Old Joe Martinez selling oranges. "Nice oranges, real nice. Be a shame if something happened to them. You know, accidents happen in markets. Stuff gets knocked over, ruined, unless, you know, people have proper protection." Joe's weathered face paled. "I don't want any trouble." "Course not." Viper's smile was a threat wrapped in crocodile teeth. "That's why you're going to pay a small fee. Call it insurance. $20 a week keeps your oranges safe." Snake laughed, the sound ugly, and deliberately swept his hand across Joe's display. Oranges scattered across the pavement, rolling under tables, bruising on impact. "Oops," Snake said. See what I mean about accidents? The pattern repeated at the next stall, then the next. Demands for protection money, casual destruction, crude jokes that made vendors flinch. The Iron Wolves were establishing territory, showing dominance, making sure everyone understood the new rules. Marcus watched, appearing to focus on his own work, but his mind was cataloging everything. Organization level, moderate. Discipline, poor. Weapons, likely. Purpose, intimidation and extortion. Threat level, manageable but escalating. "Hey, farm boy!" Viper's voice snapped Marcus's attention forward. The biker leader stood at his stall now, examining the produce with exaggerated interest. "This your stuff? These your vegetables?" Viper picked up a tomato, squeezed it until juice ran between his fingers. "Not bad. For a fat guy, you grow some decent shit." Marcus straightened slowly, his expression remaining pleasant despite the calculated insult. "Appreciate the compliment. You interested in buying something or just browsing?" The question was polite, almost friendly, but something in his tone, a flatness beneath the courtesy, made Viper's eyes narrow. "Buying?" Viper laughed, looking back at his crew. "You hear this guy? Thinks we're customers." He leaned over the table, invading Marcus's space with deliberate aggression. "Let me explain how this works, farm boy. We're not customers. We're your new business partners. And partners pay each other protection fees." Marcus met his eyes with calm that carried no fear, no deference, no submission. "I appreciate the offer, but I'm doing fine on my own. Don't need any partners." The market went deathly still. Viper's face flushed red. Men like him didn't hear no, especially not from overweight farmers who should be grateful for any attention, even threatening attention. "You think you're doing fine?" Viper's voice dropped to something dangerous. "Let me show you what not fine looks like." He swept his arm across Marcus's carefully arranged display. Tomatoes exploded. Lettuce scattered. Squash hit the ground with dull thuds. Through it all, Marcus didn't move, didn't flinch. Just stood there, hands at his sides, watching with eyes that had seen worse. Much worse. "Clean that up, fat man," Viper sneered. "And think real hard about whether you want to keep playing tough guy. We'll be back next Saturday. Have our money ready." The Iron Wolves mounted their bikes, engines roaring, peeling out with unnecessary noise and smoke. As they disappeared down the street, the market released its collective breath. Marcus knelt slowly, began picking up his scattered produce, his movements methodical and calm. Mrs. Chen hurried over, but he waved her off gently. "I'm fine, Mrs. Chen. Really, just some vegetables." But as he worked, arranging what could be salvaged, discarding what was ruined, Marcus Webb felt something stir inside him, something he'd tried to bury for 3 years, something that recognized threats and calculated responses and understood that some problems couldn't be solved with politeness. The quiet farmer had tried to stay quiet. The Iron Wolves had just given him a reason to remember who he used to be. The following Saturday arrived with the same California sunshine, but Riverside County Farmers Market felt different. Vendors set up their stalls with nervous glances toward the street. Conversations were quieter. Several regular sellers hadn't shown up at all. Marcus arrived at 6:47 a.m., same as always. He unloaded his crates with the same methodical precision, arranged his produce with the same care. Routine was armor. Routine kept the past where it belonged. By 8:15, the market was half as crowded as usual. Customers hurried through their purchases, nobody lingering to chat. Even Mrs. Chen arrived earlier than normal, completing her shopping before the inevitable happened. The rumble of engines at 8:47 a.m. felt like a countdown reaching 0. 5 motorcycles. Same formation. But this time, Viper dismounted with purpose, his crew spreading out with practiced coordination. They'd done this before, Marcus realized. Other towns, other markets. This was routine for them, too. "Morning, farm boy." Viper's voice carried false cheer that made vendors flinch. He walked straight to Marcus's stall, his boots heavy on the pavement. "Miss us?" Marcus continued arranging tomatoes, his voice mild. "Morning, gentlemen. Looking to buy something today?" Viper's smile died. Behind him, Tank cracked his knuckles, a sound like breaking branches. Snake moved to Marcus's left, cutting off that angle. Razor circled right. Bull positioned himself near the support beam. Classic encirclement pattern designed to trap and intimidate. 5 hostiles, confined space, multiple civilians in potential crossfire. Tank, primary threat, close quarters capable. Snake, armed, bulge under left side of vest suggests compact pistol. Razor, knife visible on belt, but weapon discipline poor. Will telegraph before drawing. Bull, follower, will engage only if others act first. Exits, 3 viable, nearest 12 feet northeast through Chen's flower stand. The assessment happened in microseconds, automatic as breathing. 12 years of Delta Force training didn't fade, just because you wanted it to. "See, that's your problem." Viper leaned over the produce display, his cologne mixing with the scent of gasoline and aggression. "You don't listen good? We told you how this works. $20 a week. Simple math, even for a fat farmer." "And I told you," Marcus replied, his tone still pleasant. "I'm doing fine on my own. Don't need any business partners." Viper's face flushed red. In one violent motion, he swept both arms across the display table. Tomatoes exploded against the pavement. Lettuce scattered like confetti. The butternut squash, 3 weeks of careful cultivation, hit the ground with sounds like dropped bowling balls. "There goes this week's inventory," Viper announced to the silent market. "Next week, maybe it's your truck that has an accident. Week after that, maybe your barn catches fire. Accidents happen all the time to people who don't appreciate good business advice." Marcus stood perfectly still, hands at his sides, breathing controlled. Inside his head, tactical responses cascaded like dominoes. Throat strike to Viper, pivot left to sweep Snake's legs, use his momentum to drive him into Tank, elbow strike to Razor's solar plexus. Bull will freeze. 2 seconds to neutralize all 5. 3 if Tank recovers faster than projected. But those thoughts came from someone Marcus had tried to bury. Someone who'd made calculations just like these on a rooftop in Kabul 3 years ago. The mission brief had been simple. Capture or kill a high-value target. Intelligence said he'd be alone. Intelligence was wrong. Marcus's team had breached the compound at 300 hours, moving through rooms with lethal efficiency. They'd found their target in the 3rd-floor bedroom, along with his wife and 2 children ages 6 and 9, who'd been visiting unexpectedly. "Get them out," Marcus had ordered his team, making the call in a split second. Secure the target, evacuate the family, complete the mission. But the delay, those precious 30 seconds moving civilians to safety, had given the target security time to respond. The firefight that followed claimed 2 of Marcus's men, good soldiers, good men, dead because Marcus chose mercy over mission completion. The brass called it a successful operation. The target was eliminated. Civilian casualties were 0. By every metric, it was a win. Marcus handed in his resignation 2 weeks later. Some calculations, he told his commanding officer. You can't keep making. Eventually the math stops working. You listening to me, fat man? Viper's snarl snapped Marcus back to the present. I asked you a question. I heard you, Marcus replied quietly. Answer still no. Tank moved first, stepping forward with the confidence of someone who'd intimidated people with size alone his entire life. He grabbed Marcus's shirt with a meaty fist, lifting the fabric, pulling him slightly forward. Grip strength, moderate. Stance, front-weighted, poor balance. Distance to throat, 8 inches. Time to incapacitate, 0.7 seconds. Marcus could have ended it right there. One strike, and Tank would be on the ground wondering what happened. But that was the old Marcus, the one who made those calculations, the one he'd left behind. I don't want trouble, Marcus said instead, his voice carrying none of the capability he possessed. Just want to sell my vegetables. Then you should have paid when we asked nice, Snake hissed, moving closer with that twitchy aggression that suggested substance abuse. Now, the price went up. $50 right now, or we tear this whole market apart. Mrs. Chen's voice cut through the tension like a lifeline. Leave him alone. He's a good man. You have no right. Mrs. Chen, Marcus interrupted gently, his eyes never leaving Viper's face. It's okay. Please go back to your stall. But they can't just... Please. Something in his tone. Not harsh, not loud, but carrying an authority that came from years of command, made Mrs. Chen hesitate. She backed away slowly, her elderly hands trembling on her cart. Sarah Rodriguez had already fled with Emma. Other vendors watched from safe distances, wanting to help, but understanding the mathematics of violence. 5 bikers, 0 police, and intervention could mean hospitals or worse. Smart farmer, Viper grinned, watching Marcus's isolation complete itself. See what happens when you stand alone? Nobody's coming to save you. Nobody cares about some fat nobody growing tomatoes. He picked up one of the few remaining pieces of produce, a perfect heirloom tomato, purple-red and flawless, and squeezed it until juice ran down his forearm. Next Saturday, Viper said, dropping the pulp at Marcus's feet. You won't be here. This is our market now. Our town. You're done, farm boy. Go find somewhere else to play with your vegetables. The Iron Wolves mounted their bikes, engines roaring to life with unnecessary violence. They peeled out in formation, leaving black tire marks across the market pavilion like signatures of dominance. The market remained silent for a long moment after they'd gone. Then Marcus knelt slowly, began picking up what could be salvaged. His movements were methodical, calm, showing no anger or fear. Just patience. The patience of a man who'd learned that some problems solved themselves if you waited long enough, and others required precise timing and overwhelming force, but only when every other option was exhausted. He was scooping squash into a crate when Deputy Torres's patrol car finally arrived. Marcus, I got calls about the bikers. Torres jogged over, taking in the destruction. Jesus, they did all this? Just some vegetables, Marcus replied, his voice unchanged. Nothing that can't be replaced. Torres's jaw tightened. He was young for a deputy, maybe 35, but smart enough to read what he was seeing. This is the 3rd market they've hit this month. We know they're connected to something bigger, but we can't prove it. Our sheriff's department is stretched thin. 4 deputies for the whole county. Marcus stood slowly, brushing dirt from his jeans. They mentioned coming back? They always do. Torres's frustration was evident. Look, Marcus, I know you're just trying to run your farm, but these guys, they're not regular bikers. We've got intelligence suggesting cartel connections, drug distribution networks. They pick small towns because they know local law enforcement can't handle organized crime. What are you saying? Torres met his eyes. I'm saying maybe you should consider taking a few weeks off. Let us handle this. For your safety. Marcus looked around the market, at Mrs. Chen watching from her flower stand, at Sarah Rodriguez's empty stall where Emma usually played, at the other vendors who'd shown up despite their fear because this market was their livelihood, their community. Appreciate the concern, Deputy, Marcus said quietly. But this is my father's farm, my home. I'm not going anywhere. Torres sighed, recognizing the stubbornness of men who'd decided their line in the sand. Your choice. But Marcus, be careful. These guys don't play fair and they don't back down easy. As Torres drove away to file his useless report, Marcus finished cleaning his stall. The sun climbed higher over Riverside, warming the pavement, drying the tomato juice, erasing the physical evidence of what had happened. But not the memory. Not the calculation Marcus had made, standing in the center of that encirclement, counting the seconds it would take to neutralize 5 threats while surrounded by civilians. 0.7 seconds for Tank, 1.2 for Snake, 0.9 for Razor. Bull would freeze for 2 seconds minimum. Viper would be last, 1.5 seconds to full incapacitation, 4.6 seconds total to end the threat, 4.6 seconds to become the person he'd sworn never to be again. Marcus Webb drove home that afternoon with empty crates and full thoughts. He'd come to Riverside for peace, for distance from the calculations that used to define his existence. But peace, he was starting to remember, wasn't something you found. Sometimes it was something you had to fight for. The clubhouse sat 15 miles outside Riverside, a converted warehouse surrounded by chain-link fence and razor wire. Inside, motorcycle parts and beer cans competed for floor space with more sinister equipment. Industrial scales, vacuum sealers, and burner phones stacked like playing cards. Viper slammed his beer down on the scarred wooden table, the sound echoing through the main room. His knuckles were still red from punching the wall on the ride back from the market. That fat fuck thinks he can disrespect us? His voice carried the dangerous edge of a man whose authority had been questioned in front of his crew. In front of everyone? Makes us look weak. Tank leaned against a support beam, arms crossed over his massive chest. Want me to go back tonight? Break some windows, slash some tires? Send a message? No. Viper's eyes had gone cold, calculating. He pulled out his phone, scrolling through messages. We do this right. We make an example so loud every farmer in that market pays up by Monday. Snake paced near the window, his nervous energy filling the space. Boss, maybe we're making this bigger than it needs to be. Guy's just a farmer. Probably scared shitless already. He wasn't scared. Razor interrupted, his voice quiet but certain. I've seen scared. That guy? He was calm, too calm, like he was sizing us up. Viper's phone buzzed. He read the message, then smiled, the expression carrying no humor. Just got word from Navarro. The room went quiet. Everyone knew that name. Diego Navarro ran distribution for the Sinaloa cartel from San Diego to Sacramento. The Iron Wolves weren't just a motorcycle club. They were contracted muscle, transportation, and local enforcement for a network that moved millions in product every month. What did he say? Bull asked, speaking for the first time. Says Riverside is green lit for a new distribution point. We establish control this month. We start running product by November. 3 routes converge here. Perfect location for a hub. Viper stood, his authority reasserting itself. But Navarro was clear. No heat, no attention, complete local control. That means no fat farmers standing up to us. That means everyone in this town understands who's in charge. Tank cracked his knuckles again. So we're going after him? Tonight, 2 a.m. Viper walked to a tactical map of Riverside spread across another table. Someone had marked properties with red X's, potential targets, strategic locations. Marcus's farm had 3 red circles around it. Webb's farm is isolated. No close neighbors except some old vet. We go in quiet, torch his crops, kill his livestock if he's got any. Maybe burn down that pretty barn of his. Make it look like an accident. Faulty wiring, something. And if he's there? Razor asked. Viper's smile widened. Then we teach him what happens when you say no to the Iron Wolves. Nothing permanent. Can't have cops investigating a murder, but enough that he remembers. Enough that everyone at that market hears about it and gets real motivated to cooperate. Snake pulled out a tactical knife, testing its edge against his thumb. Been a while since we had a good reminder session. Gear up, Viper ordered. Balaclavas, dark clothes, nothing that traces back. We're ghosts tonight. In and out, maximum damage, 0 evidence. By tomorrow morning, Marcus Webb will wish he'd paid that $20. The crew dispersed to prepare, leaving Viper alone with the map. He traced the route to Marcus's farm with one finger, already imagining the flames, the fear, the submission that would follow. Riverside would learn. They always did. By sunset, the news had spread through Riverside like wildfire. Every vendor at the farmer's market had seen the destruction, the intimidation, the message written in scattered vegetables and tire marks. At Rodriguez Family Restaurant, Sarah sat with her husband Miguel, their daughter Emma asleep upstairs. The dinner crowd had been sparse. People were staying home, worried about being visible targets. "Maybe we should pay them," Sarah said quietly, her voice carrying the exhaustion of fear. $20 a week? That's better than losing everything. Miguel's jaw tightened. That's extortion. Once we pay, they own us. The amount goes up, the demands increase. There's no end to it. Then what do we do? Fight them? You saw what they did to Marcus's stall. Next time it could be worse. It could be... Her eyes flicked toward the ceiling, toward Emma's room, and she couldn't finish the sentence. At the sheriff's substation, Deputy Torres stared at his computer screen, reviewing incident reports with growing frustration. 3 towns, 7 businesses, all following the same pattern: intimidation, escalation, submission. The Iron Wolves were methodical, professional. This wasn't amateur hour. His phone rang. Sheriff Anderson, calling from the county seat 30 miles away. "Torres, I saw your report about the market incident." "Sheriff, we need to move on these guys. They're not stopping, and the community's terrified." "With what resources?" Anderson's voice carried the weariness of an undermanned department facing overwhelming odds. "I've got 4 deputies covering 2,200 square miles. State police are stretched even thinner. Unless someone gets seriously hurt, we don't have the manpower for a major operation. So we just let them take over? I'm saying document everything, build a case, and hope we can get federal involvement before this escalates. That's all we've got." Torres ended the call and put his head in his hands. He'd become a deputy to protect people, but what good was a badge when you didn't have the resources to back it up? At the edge of Marcus's property, Frank Miller sat on his porch watching the sun set. At 68, he'd seen enough violence for 3 lifetimes. 2 tours in Vietnam had taught him what men were capable of when they thought they had power. He watched Marcus's truck pull into the driveway, saw his neighbor exit with that same calm demeanor that never quite matched the intelligence in his eyes. Frank had recognized something in Marcus 3 years ago when he'd first moved back. The way he moved, the way he observed, the way he carried himself despite the extra weight. You didn't survive the Mekong Delta without learning to spot operators. Frank grabbed his walking stick and crossed the property line, finding Marcus in his barn unloading empty crates. "Heard about what happened at the market," Frank said without preamble. "Heard it was pretty bad." Marcus continued his work, not looking up. "Just some vegetables, Frank. Nothing serious." "Don't bullshit an old soldier, son." Frank's voice hardened. "I know who those boys are. Iron Wolves aren't just some motorcycle club playing dress up. They're connected, cartel muscle. They hurt people for a living." Marcus finally looked up, and for just a moment, Frank saw something in those eyes, something that confirmed every suspicion he'd had about his neighbor's past. "I appreciate the concern," Marcus said carefully, "but I can handle myself." "I'm sure you can." Frank leaned on his walking stick. "Question is, should you? Whatever you were before you came here, whatever skills you've got gathering dust, using them changes things, changes you. Trust me on that." After Frank left, Marcus stood alone in his barn as twilight deepened into night. The building smelled of hay and oil, familiar and safe. But tucked in the corner behind a false wall panel his father had installed decades ago was something else. Marcus's hands found the hidden latch automatically. The panel swung open, revealing a locked case he hadn't touched in 3 years. Inside, tactical gear, carefully maintained. A Sig Sauer P226, cleaned and oiled despite never being fired since his discharge. Night vision equipment, communications gear, body armor, everything a Delta Force operator might need, preserved like museum pieces from a life he'd tried to leave behind. Marcus lifted the Sig, feeling its familiar weight. Muscle memory kicked in. Press check, sight alignment, trigger discipline. His body remembered even if he'd tried to forget. "No," he thought, setting the weapon down. "This isn't who I am anymore. Violence isn't the answer. There are other ways." But even as he closed the panel and locked it again, Marcus knew he was lying to himself. He'd seen men like Viper before, talked to them, tried to reason with them, offered them exits. Some men only understood one language. Marcus walked back to his farmhouse as darkness settled over Riverside. He made dinner, watched television, went through the motions of normalcy, but part of his mind, the part trained to calculate threats and plan responses, was already working. The Iron Wolves would come. Maybe not tonight, but soon. Men like Viper couldn't let challenges go unanswered, and when they did, Marcus would have to decide. Be the peaceful farmer he wanted to be, or the operator he'd tried to stop being. At midnight, Marcus lay in bed staring at the ceiling. Sleep wouldn't come. Outside, crickets sang their endless song. The farm was peaceful, quiet, exactly what he'd moved here for. He didn't hear the motorcycles yet. They were still miles away, 5 riders dressed in black, carrying accelerants and weapons, coming to teach a lesson. But somewhere deep in Marcus Webb's hind brain, old instincts whispered warnings. The night felt wrong, too quiet. The kind of quiet that came before contact, before operations went hot, before the world exploded into violence and someone had to make those terrible calculations again. Marcus rose from bed and walked to his window. The moonlight painted his farm in silver and shadow. Peaceful, pastoral, perfect. for now. But storms were coming, and Marcus Webb, retired Delta Force commander, was running out of reasons to stay retired. The motion sensor on the eastern property line triggered at 1:47 a.m. Marcus was already awake, sitting in his darkened kitchen with a cup of coffee gone cold. He'd installed the sensors 3 years ago, ostensibly to alert him when deer were getting into his crops. Actually, because old habits died hard, and perimeter security was as natural to him as breathing. His phone lit up with the alert. Sector 3, large movement detected. Then, 90 seconds later, Sector 5, multiple contacts. They were coming through the back access road, the route that avoided the main highway. Smart enough to avoid obvious approaches. Not smart enough to consider that a farmer might have security measures. Marcus rose slowly from his chair, his substantial frame moving with surprising quiet through the house. He didn't arm himself. That would be escalation, a line crossed that couldn't be uncrossed. Instead, he simply walked to his front porch, turned on the overhead light, and settled into the wooden rocking chair his father had built 40 years ago. Then, he waited. The sound of engines came first. 5 motorcycles running without headlights, crawling up his long driveway at near idle. They killed the engines 50 yards out, coasting the rest of the way in eerie silence. Professional enough, amateur enough. Marcus could make out 5 figures in the moonlight, all dressed in black, faces covered with balaclavas. They dismounted quietly, communicating with hand signals. One carried a jerry can, gasoline most likely. Another had what looked like bolt cutters. They were prepared for locks, for obstacles, for a sleeping target. They weren't prepared for Marcus. He rocked slowly in his chair, the wood creaking rhythmically in the night silence. The sound carried across the yard, and he watched the figures freeze, confusion rippling through their group formation. "Coffee's fresh," Marcus called out, his voice conversational, almost friendly. "Made a whole pot about an hour ago, if you boys are interested." For a moment, nothing. Then Viper's voice, muffled by the balaclava but unmistakable. "What the fuck?" The 5 figures approached cautiously, hands moving to weapons they carried. Pipes, bats, one pistol Marcus could identify by its distinctive profile. They spread out instinctively, trying to establish dominance through positioning. Marcus just kept rocking, his hands wrapped around his coffee mug. "Figured you'd show up eventually," he continued, his tone as casual as if discussing weather. "Men like you don't let things go. It's a pride thing, I understand. So here's what I'm offering. You turn around, get back on those bikes, and we forget this ever happened. No police, no consequences. Just walk away." Viper pulled off his balaclava, his face twisted with rage and confusion. "You think you're funny, fat man? Think this is a game?" "No game." Marcus set down his coffee mug with careful precision. "Just giving you a choice. Last chance, actually. What happens next depends entirely on what you decide in the next 10 seconds. Tank moved first, his massive frame stepping onto the porch, wooden boards groaning under his weight. "Boss, let me handle this. Old man wants to play tough, I'll show him what tough looks like." 10 seconds, Marcus repeated, his voice unchanged. 9, 8. Fuck this. Snake rushed forward, bat raised above his head, his approach telegraphed by 3 full strides of wind-up. Amateur, predictable. Marcus rose from his chair in one fluid motion. No wasted movement, no hesitation. His left hand caught Snake's wrist mid-swing, redirecting the momentum with precise physics. The bat sailed harmlessly past Marcus's head, while Snake's own force carried him forward, off balance, Marcus's right palm struck Snake's solar plexus. Controlled force, precise placement. The biker folded like a dropped puppet, gasping for air that wouldn't come for the next 30 seconds. Non-lethal, temporary, professional. Threat 1 neutralized. Time elapsed. 1.2 seconds. "Get him!" Viper shouted, and chaos erupted. Razor came from the left, knife leading, the blade catching moonlight. Marcus sidestepped the thrust using minimal movement, caught Razor's extended arm, and applied a classic standing wrist lock. The knife clattered to the porch as Razor's shoulder joint reached its tolerance threshold. One smooth rotation, and the biker was face down on the wooden boards, Marcus's knee on his spine. His arm bent at an angle that promised agony if he moved. Threat 2 controlled. Time elapsed. 3.8 seconds. Bull charged straight ahead like his namesake. Pure mass and momentum. No technique. Marcus used it against him. A simple leg sweep at the exact moment Bull's weight shifted forward, and physics did the rest. The big man went down hard, his head missing the porch railing by inches. Marcus followed him down, applied a precise chokehold targeting the carotid artery. Not crushing the windpipe, not cutting off air, just restricting blood flow to the brain. Bull struggled for maybe 3 seconds, then went limp. He'd wake up in a minute or two with a headache and no permanent damage. Threat 3. Unconscious. Time elapsed. 7.1 seconds. Tank roared and came in swinging, his boxing background evident in his stance and combinations. But boxing was sport, rules, and referees. This wasn't. Marcus absorbed the first punch on his shoulder. Let Tank feel like he'd connected. Let him commit to the pattern. The second punch, Marcus slipped, his bulk surprisingly mobile. The third, he parried with his forearm while simultaneously driving his other hand into Tank's bicep muscle, a nerve strike that temporarily deadened the entire arm. Tank's expression shifted from aggression to confusion as his right arm went limp. Marcus didn't give him time to adjust. A precise foot sweep dropped Tank to one knee. Then Marcus's hand found the pressure point where Tank's neck met his shoulder. Tank's eyes rolled back. He toppled like a felled tree. Threat 4 incapacitated. Time elapsed. 14.6 seconds. Viper had pulled his pistol, a Glock 19, held in a two-handed grip that suggested some training but not enough. His hands shook slightly, fear or adrenaline or both. "Don't move," Viper's voice cracked. "I swear to God I'll shoot." Marcus stood perfectly still, hands visible. Body language non-threatening. Around him, 4 bikers lay groaning or unconscious on his porch. The entire confrontation had lasted less than 20 seconds. "You could shoot me," Marcus said quietly. "That's true. But then you're not teaching me a lesson or sending a message. You're just murdering someone, becoming a cop-killer case that brings federal attention down on you and everyone you work for. That what your cartel bosses want?" The pistol wavered. "Or," Marcus continued, taking one slow step forward, "you could put that down, collect your boys, and we have a different conversation. Adult to adult." "Stay back!" Viper's finger tightened on the trigger. Not enough to fire, but close. Too close. Marcus moved. One step became a lunge, closing the 3 feet between them faster than Viper's panicked reflexes could track. Marcus's left hand struck Viper's wrist from the outside, pushing the pistol's muzzle away from both of them. His right hand trapped Viper's gun hand, controlling the weapon while his body rotated, using leverage to twist the biker's entire arm. The Glock fell. Viper screamed as his shoulder joint hyperextended, not dislocated, not broken, just stretched to its painful limit. Marcus maintained the lock with one hand while grabbing Viper's belt with the other, using it to flip him onto his back on the porch boards. Final threat neutralized. Total elapsed time: 18.3 seconds. Marcus secured the Glock, ejected the magazine, cleared the chamber, and set the weapon on his porch table. Then he methodically went to each biker, using their own belts to secure their hands behind their backs, not tight enough to cut off circulation, but secure enough that they couldn't easily escape. Snake had recovered enough to gasp. "What the fuck are you?" Marcus didn't answer. He pulled out his phone and dialed Deputy Torres's personal number. "Torres? It's Marcus Webb. Got a situation at my farm. 5 individuals attempted to commit arson and assault. They're secured on my porch. You might want to bring backup and probably an ambulance. Nobody's seriously hurt, but a couple of them are going to need medical evaluation." By the time Torres arrived 18 minutes later with 2 other deputies and an ambulance, the situation looked almost peaceful. Marcus sat in his rocking chair, coffee in hand. 5 bikers sat on the porch steps in various states of consciousness, zip-tied with professional efficiency, confusion, and fear written across their faces. "Jesus Christ," Torres breathed, taking in the scene. "What happened here?" "They came to vandalize my property," Marcus explained calmly. "I defended myself, used minimum necessary force. They're all going to be fine. Just some bruises and hurt pride." As deputies began processing the scene, Marcus watched Viper being loaded into the ambulance. The biker's shoulder would need ice and painkillers, but nothing was broken. Marcus had been precise. Before the ambulance doors closed, Viper locked eyes with Marcus, his expression a mixture of pain and fear and rage. "You have no idea who you're messing with," Viper spat. "My people, when they find out about this, you're dead. You and everyone in this shithole town." Marcus stepped closer to the ambulance, his voice dropping to something that carried no warmth, no humor, nothing but cold certainty. "Neither do you." The words hung in the air between them, a promise, a warning, the truth that Viper was only now beginning to understand. This wasn't a lucky farmer. This wasn't someone who'd stumbled through self-defense. This was something else entirely. As the ambulance pulled away and deputies finished their work, Torres approached Marcus with an expression that mixed gratitude and suspicion. "Marcus, what you did here, that was..." He struggled for words. "Self-defense," Marcus supplied helpfully. "That was the most professional self-defense I've ever seen." Torres studied him carefully. "I pulled your service record yesterday. Most of it's classified. What exactly were you before you came to Riverside?" Marcus finished his coffee, looking out at his farm, his peaceful, quiet farm that had just become anything but. "Just a farmer, deputy. Now, if you'll excuse me, I've got crops to tend in the morning." As Torres and his team departed with their prisoners, Marcus stood alone on his porch, watching the sun begin its slow rise over the San Bernardino Mountains. The night raid was over. The bikers were in custody. But Marcus knew this wasn't finished. Viper had been right about one thing. People would find out about this. And when they did, when whoever was backing the Iron Wolves learned that their local muscle had been dismantled by a farmer in less than 20 seconds, then the real test would begin. Marcus Webb went inside, washed his coffee cup, and prepared for another day of farming. But in his barn, behind that false panel, his old equipment waited. Just in case being a farmer wasn't enough anymore. Just in case being a warrior was the only option left. Deputy Torres returned to Marcus's farm the next afternoon with a folder that felt heavier than its physical weight suggested. He found Marcus in the greenhouse, pruning tomato plants, with the focused attention of someone who genuinely cared about agriculture. For a moment, Torres almost believed the simple farmer's story. Almost. "Funny thing," Torres said, leaning against the door frame. "I've been a deputy for 8 years. Seen bar fights, domestic disputes, even a few armed robberies. Never seen someone dismantle 5 armed attackers in under 20 seconds using nothing but their bare hands." Marcus didn't look up from his pruning. "Adrenaline does amazing things. Fight or flight response. That wasn't adrenaline." Torres stepped inside, setting the folder on a workbench. "That was training, professional military-grade training. So I did what any curious cop would do. I pulled your service record." Marcus's hands stilled on the tomato plant, just for a moment. "Most of it's redacted," Torres continued. "Classified operations, dates blacked out, locations removed. But what I could see, Delta Force, multiple commendations, deployments to places the military won't even confirm exist. Then 3 years ago, abrupt retirement. No explanation, no transition period. Just done." Marcus finally looked up, his expression unreadable. "That life's behind me, deputy. I came here for peace, to work my father's land. What happened last night was self-defense. Nothing more." "Self-defense." Torres opened the folder, revealing photos. "The bikers were all released this morning. Bail posted within 4 hours by a law firm based in San Diego, same firm that represents known cartel operations." He spread more documents across the bench. Financial records, surveillance photos, intelligence reports. "The Iron Wolves aren't just bikers, Marcus. They're contractors for the Sinaloa cartel. Muscle, transportation, local enforcement. They've been systematically taking control of small agricultural communities between San Diego and Sacramento. Riverside's just another target in a much bigger operation." Marcus studied the documents, his tactical mind processing patterns he recognized too well. Distribution routes, money laundering through legitimate businesses, violence as a tool of territorial control. "Why tell me this?" he asked quietly. "Because that display last night? That's going to draw attention. Cartel attention. They don't forgive and they don't forget." Torres met his eyes. "You defended yourself, but you also humiliated their local operation. They'll come back, and next time it won't be 5 bikers with bats. It'll be professionals with guns and no hesitation about using them." Marcus returned to his tomatoes, but his hands moved differently now, still careful but distracted by calculations he'd tried to stop making. "I appreciate the warning, deputy, but I'm not leaving my home. I'm not asking you to leave." Torres's voice carried frustration and something else, hope, maybe. "I'm asking for your help. Our department can't handle organized crime. We're outmanned, outgunned, and out of our depth. But you know this world. You've fought these kinds of enemies before." "Not anymore." Marcus's response was immediate, firm. "I left that person behind for a reason. Violence only creates more violence. I made that choice 3 years ago, and I'm not changing it. Even if innocent people get hurt. Mrs. Chen, Sarah Rodriguez and her daughter, all the farmers at that market. They're targets now because the cartel needs total control. You think they'll stop with intimidation?" Marcus's jaw tightened, the conflict visible in his expression. Everything he'd tried to escape was pulling him back. The calculations, the operations, the burden of having skills most people would never understand. What are you asking me to do? I don't know yet, Torres admitted. But when the cartel makes their next move, and they will, I'd rather have someone on our side who knows how to fight them. Someone who's already proven they can. After Torres left, Marcus stood alone among his tomato plants, surrounded by the peaceful life he'd built, feeling it crack under the weight of who he used to be. His phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. Enjoyed our meeting. Next time, will be different. V. Viper. Already out. Already threatening. Marcus deleted the message and returned to his pruning, but his hands shook slightly now, not from fear, but from the terrible knowledge that some problems couldn't be solved with patience and peace. Sometimes warriors didn't get to retire. Sometimes the war followed you home. Miguel El Fantasma Reyes watched Marcus Webb through binoculars from a hillside half a mile away. The farmer moved through his greenhouse with methodical efficiency, but Reyes saw what others missed: the constant awareness, the tactical positioning near exits, the way he naturally kept his back to walls. Operator, Reyes thought with certainty. Former Mexican Special Forces himself, he recognized the patterns instantly. This wasn't a farmer who'd gotten lucky. This was someone who'd spent years in the same world Reyes had inhabited. He made the call. "We have a problem. Your bikers attacked a professional, Delta Force probably. He dismantled them like children." The cartel's response was swift and brutal. Eliminate Marcus Webb, or the Iron Wolves would be eliminated instead. Viper, still nursing his injured shoulder, understood he'd made a fatal mistake. They planned a dawn assault, 5 bikers plus 4 cartel enforcers, heavily armed, overwhelming force. But Marcus had made a call too, to Jake Harrison, his former Delta Force teammate, now running counter-narcotics for the FBI. "I need intel on Sinaloa operations in Southern California," Marcus had said, "and I need it yesterday." Jake had delivered within hours: distribution centers, cartel connections, planned operations. And something else: a promise that FBI tactical teams would be ready when Marcus gave the signal. "You sure about this?" Jake had asked. "You could just disappear. New identity, new life." Marcus had looked out at his farm, at the community he'd become part of. "I tried running from who I am. Doesn't work. Sometimes you have to stand." Dawn broke over Riverside with deceptive peace. Marcus stood in his barn, surrounded by preparations that looked agricultural but served tactical purposes. Hay bales positioned for cover, irrigation trenches that channeled movement. His knowledge of terrain transformed into advantage. The attack came at 6:15 a.m. 9 men, assault rifles, coordinating through radio communications. Professional, dangerous. But they were entering Marcus's battlefield. The first biker triggered a tripwire Marcus had rigged through his cornfield. A modified sprinkler system erupted, not with water, but with liquid extracted from his hottest peppers, concentrated capsaicin that turned the air into chemical warfare. 2 bikers went down immediately, clawing at their burning eyes and throats. The cartel enforcers adapted quickly, advancing through the barn with proper tactical clearing procedures. Marcus led them through a maze he'd prepared, narrow passages between hay bales, false routes that funneled them into predetermined kill zones. Not killing zones. Capture zones. A support beam gave way, controlled collapse that trapped 3 men without crushing them. Another enforcer found himself in an irrigation ditch that suddenly filled with water, his heavy tactical gear dragging him down until Marcus's strategically placed rope offered the only way out, straight into restraints. 20 minutes of calculated chaos. Marcus moved through his farm like a ghost, using every advantage, fighting smart instead of hard. The bikers were incapacitated with non-lethal precision. The cartel enforcers required more sophisticated tactics, but Marcus had fought their kind before. Finally, in the center of the farm, Marcus and El Fantasma faced each other. Both men held their weapons ready but not aimed. Professional courtesy between operators who recognized each other's capabilities. "You're good," El Fantasma said in lightly accented English. "Better than good. This was a trap." "From the beginning," Marcus confirmed. "Your distribution center in Ontario, the FBI's hitting it right now. Your entire regional operation is finished." El Fantasma's expression didn't change, but Marcus saw the calculation in his eyes. Keep fighting and die here, or withdraw and survive. "Different war, different time," El Fantasma said quietly, lowering his weapon. "We might have been brothers." "Maybe," Marcus replied. "Today we're just men who made different choices." El Fantasma withdrew with his surviving enforcers, disappearing into the dawn. The Iron Wolves weren't so lucky. Deputy Torres and federal agents arrived within minutes, taking them into custody as Marcus had orchestrated. 1 month later, Riverside County Farmers Market buzzed with its familiar Saturday energy. Marcus arranged his heirloom tomatoes with the same careful attention, but everything had changed. Mrs. Chen approached with a thermos. "Special tea?" she said firmly. "You look tired. Heroes need rest, too." Sarah Rodriguez's daughter, Emma, ran up with a crayon drawing, a stick figure labeled Mr. Marcus, surrounded by hearts and badly drawn vegetables. "Mama says you kept us safe." Marcus knelt down, accepting the drawing like it was precious. "Your mama's the brave one, sweetheart. She kept showing up even when she was scared." Frank Miller appeared at his elbow, the old Vietnam vet's eyes carrying understanding. "You did good, son. Protecting without destroying, that's the hard part." Deputy Torres approached last, official business mixing with genuine respect. "The Sheriff's Department wants to hire you as a consultant, teaching threat assessment, de-escalation tactics. Use those skills without needing to use them." Marcus considered the offer, looking around the market at people who'd become his community. "Part-time. The farm comes first." Wouldn't have it any other way. A troubled teenager Marcus had noticed hanging around approached hesitantly, the kid who'd been tagging buildings and skipping school. "Mr. Webb, Deputy Torres said you might need help with your farm. Said working with you might help me figure some things out." Marcus studied the boy, seeing potential beneath the defensive posture. "You know anything about growing tomatoes?" "No, sir." "Good. Means I can teach you right. Tomorrow, 6 a.m., dress for work." As the day progressed, Marcus felt something settle in his chest. Not peace exactly, but balance. He'd spent 3 years trying to escape who he'd been, thinking that violence and protection couldn't coexist in the same person. He'd been wrong. The warrior and the farmer weren't separate identities. They were the same man, using different tools for the same purpose, protecting what mattered. The difference was choosing when each approach served best. That evening, Marcus found a note tucked into his truck. No signature, but he knew the handwriting. El Fantasma's final message. "Respect, operator. You won not because you were stronger, but because you were smarter. That's what separates operators from soldiers. Until we meet again, and we will, stay sharp. Marcus burned the note but kept the lesson. Some men would always exist in that shadow world between law and chaos. His job wasn't to eliminate them all, it was to protect his community from their reach. He was still Marcus Webb, farmer. Still the man who grew the best tomatoes in Riverside County, who had time for conversations about weather and vegetables, who found peace in routine and soil and sunrise. But he was also the other Marcus, the operator who could calculate threat responses in microseconds, who understood that sometimes protecting peace required strength, who'd proven that retirement didn't mean powerlessness. Both men could exist. Both men were needed. As he locked up his stall that evening, Marcus smiled at the simplicity of his revelation. Warriors don't retire. They just find new battles worth fighting. And sometimes the fiercest battles are the ones fought not with weapons, but with wisdom, knowing when to stand down and when to stand up. Riverside was safe, his community was protected, and Marcus Webb had finally made peace with all the parts of himself. Sometimes that was the hardest victory of all. Thanks for staying till the end. Share your story in the comments. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more powerful stories like this.